Hey, what's going on, Right Side Nation? This is Mike Hanley with Right Side News. It's Tuesday, May 29th, 2018. It's the Tuesday after Memorial Day, and sorry, it's been a couple days. I was working hard over the weekend. Had about 36 hours and 3 days at work, so kind of recovering from that, and just really kind of wanted to get back in the swing of things. Today being Tuesday, Trump had a rally in Nashville, Tennessee. And then also, I wanted to cover Roseanne Barr's tweet in regards to Valerie Jarrett. And I also kind of wanted to talk a little about Memorial Day, and I'd like to start with that. Um, I think Memorial Day is extremely important. Just the whole idea of honoring our fallen heroes, our veterans that have passed away overseas. It's just extremely important. It's an important day to celebrate their lives and the freedom that they have been able to bestow upon us. Because without them defending our freedom, we wouldn't have it. And one of the most important things to say is freedom isn't free. It's extremely important that we honor those people and keep them in our hearts. So it's a beautiful holiday, and I'm just glad that I was able to celebrate it. So just wanted to say those few words, but I'd like to kind of jump into the Trump rally that was held in Nashville. I mean, there was some great energy in this rally. I mean, this was like the 2016 presidential campaign. Um, so much energy, people just hollering, hooting, and Trump was absolutely on point. He talked a little bit about the fake stream media, or in other words, fake news. And of course, he got a huge, huge boo from the crowd. I mean, he's just sitting back there pointing, as he always does, at the fake news media. And he got the crowd pretty fired up. Definitely a low rumbling boo from the crowd. So Trump was able to basically, the idea around the rally was to essentially rally the base around Marsha Blackburn, who was running for the U.S. Senate in the state of Tennessee. He called her up and she outlined a few things that were absolutely very important. She mentioned 7 things that Trump was able to nominate Gorsuch to the Supreme Court. He has appointed 40 federal judges. Um, he has repealed the federal mandate through the tax cuts. So the tax cuts and the federal mandate were coupled together when he removed the federal mandate for paying for essentially not having health care. And he spoke about that. I mean, does that make any sense? Essentially, that is, we're paying money so that we don't have to get health care from the federal government. I mean, that is absolutely insane. That's just another money grab. Um, he also has decreased illegal immigration. He is standing up to China on trade, as we've talked about in previous videos. Reduced the trade deficit by around $340 billion. And he also defeated ISIS. I mean, think about the media and how much talk was around ISIS, the bombings, the trucks driving through crowds, all the support that ISIS seemed to have, both economically and from countries in the Middle East. And Trump has done exactly what he said he was going to do. I mean, and this is all in the first 18 months of his campaign. He said that he was going to do it, and he's done it. I mean, can we name any politician in the history of our country that has done something like that? I mean, to the best of my knowledge, Reagan wasn't able to do things to the extent that Trump has done, especially so quickly. He talked about the economy, 3.3 million new jobs. I mean, this goes back to Barack Obama standing on stage and saying, "Does Trump have a magic wand? How's he going to make this happen?" 3.3 million new jobs. And just imagine if he would have said that during the presidential campaign. I'm going to create 3.3 million jobs in my first 18 months. I mean, people would have gone crazy. Oh, Trump can't do that. He can't do this. I mean, child, please. Child, please. I mean, this guy. It's unbelievable. Um, we have unemployment is the lowest level since the turn of the century. So since 2000. Um, Essentially 19 years ago. Black employment, Hispanic employment, the lowest it's ever been in history, and wages are on the rise. Oftentimes during the campaign, Trump would talk about the wages. People will be working 2 and 3 jobs just to make the wage that they were making on one job when they used to work, in previous years. Now people are working 2 and 3 jobs just to make that amount of money. And now, what we're seeing is wages are back on the rise. If people are making more money working one job, of course they're not going to hold 2 or 3. So people have to work less, hopefully, if we have rising wages. But just to get back to the Senate race, Phil Bredesen, who is a Democratic contributor, is running for the U.S. Senate on the Democratic side. And like I said, we have Marsha Blackburn, and she stood up there and talked about those 7 things that I just mentioned. And she's there to support Trump's agenda and to vote according to, what he is trying to accomplish. Trump also had mentioned Hillary Clinton. And as soon as he mentioned Hillary Clinton, of course, using the nickname Crooked Hillary, there was an immediate chant from the crowd, "Lock her up," which to me, it is amusing, but I don't know, I don't know if that's something that people really want. I mean, with the background of Hillary, the Clinton cartel, and all of the various things that the Clinton Foundation has been involved in, something tells me that people are still upset about that and that she should be brought to justice. So, we always, we want to be, I think, very careful in how we just throw accusations out the window. But I think in this case, based on Hillary Clinton and her record, I would say for the most part that she should be investigated from the crimes that she has committed. So, and that goes everything from the email server to her dealings with Uranium One when she was Secretary of State, with a third-party entity that sold 1/5 of America's uranium to Russia. So, I mean, these are extremely important things that should be investigated in regards to Hillary Clinton. One thing that really touched me, just based on the Trump rally in Nashville, Trump talked about that he had solidified $6 billion to fight opiate abuse. And this is something that hits home with me because I have had 2 friends of mine actually have passed away from overdoses from heroin. And that is an extremely scary thing. And I am completely 110% in support of the task force that is fighting opiate abuse. And on the lighter side of things, one of the things that he said is, Trump said you go in, you break your arm, you go to the hospital, and you come out a drug addict. I mean, are we really serving our people by prescribing, Oxycontins to people for pain? I mean, absolutely not. So I understand that in some cases Oxycontin can be useful, the opioid Oxycontin, but on the other hand, I think it should be prescribed in very minimal cases and only when absolutely necessary. Another thing that was that Trump went over was NAFTA, and of course he said that Mexico will pay for the wall. He talked about, of course, the amount of money that we lose every single year. We lose about $100 billion a year to Mexico. And so when we're losing $100 billion a year to Mexico with the North America Free Trade Agreement, plus the amount of money that flows south of the border because of the drugs that are coming in, we're losing massive amounts of money. And essentially, Mexico isn't helpful to us in any way in terms of preventing people who are coming in from Central America into the United States. So they're going from, El Salvador and other locations in other countries coming up through Mexico illegally. And then we also have people coming up through or drugs coming. So basically what we have is people coming through Mexico illegally, people that are involved in both drug smuggling and human trafficking. So, I mean, those are two extremely important issues that I think are extremely important as it pertains to the North American Free Trade Agreement, because the only way that Trump is going to make a deal with Mexico is if they abide by certain rules. So he's going to restructure the North America Free Trade Agreement. He's going to make sure that Mexico prevents the drugs from coming in, the people from coming in, and then also he's going to do what he can on his side in terms of immigration. So we have border crossings down 40%. And also he referred back to the summit that he had last week in regards to MS-13 and their influence in Long Island. And he specifically talked about how they're killing people. I mean, they're not just killing people with guns. The Democrats always talk about, oh, we need gun control, guns this, guns that. Well, MS-13 is killing people with machetes, with knives. They're cutting them up. They're cutting people up because it's more painful. And so it's really to instill fear in people, so that they essentially just lie prey to these gang members. So what we have seen is, I also think that it's worse than Trump ever thought in terms of the influence that MS-13 has. I mean, what they basically do is infiltrate our country through immigration, through our poor immigration laws. And we have Democrats here that are voting for sanctuary cities. They're voting against Kate's law. We all remember Kate Steinle, who was shot in San Francisco on the pier when she was with her father by an illegal immigrant who had been deported from our country previously, I think 6 times. So, those things are just an absolute atrocity, and it's important that we make sure that our immigration is tightened up, that people enter our country legally, and we know what type of people are coming here and why they're coming here. We need to know their intentions for entering this country. No more of this lottery nonsense. We need to have people that will come here, and when they come here, they need to come here legally, and they have to be able to benefit our country. And we need to get the very best. We need to get the best people we can to help our country move forward, move in a positive direction. Another thing that was talked about were the tax cuts, and I mentioned it earlier. The individual mandate on healthcare, where people were paying the government so that they didn't have to have healthcare through the federal government, which, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. So with the tax cuts, they brought taxes down to create economic growth so that people are taxed less. That's more money in your pocket for a higher standard of living. Another thing you talked about is Anwar, which is in the northern eastmost part of Alaska, and it's essentially an oil reserve that we have in the United States that was put into the tax cuts bill, and these tax cuts are going to allow us to drill for oil up in northeast Alaska. And then lastly, we have the opportunity for choice for veterans. So let's say a veteran is not getting adequate care through the VA, the Veterans Administration. They have the ability to, rather than go to a VA hospital, they're going to have choice to go to a local provider. So instead of having to drive 1, 2, 3 hours to go to the VA hospital and wait in line for umpteen amount of hours, they're going to have the opportunity to they're going to get health care of their choice that will be paid for by the VA. So instead of having all these massive costs tied up in the Veterans Administration, we're going to have more efficiency in terms of how our veterans, in the speed also of healthcare, and how our veterans are taken care of. Also, he talked about the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem, and there was an original bid to build that embassy in Jerusalem, which was to get new land, and they would build it for $1 billion with a B, $1 billion. So the idea that we would have to wait to get it open, we'd have to pay more money, find a new site to build, it would have taken years. So instead, Trump spends $400,000, so $400K, to renovate an existing building on an existing site in a great location in Jerusalem. And as we've seen in previous months, they had the opening ceremony of the U.S. Embassy in Jerusalem. And that ultimately signifies to the world that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. And then another thing that Trump was able to do was he was able to acquire billions of dollars for fixing our airports. So he will approve that shortly, and we're going to build new infrastructure, our airports, our highways, new dams for electricity, and just everything that our country needs to just develop, create a higher standard of living, and help us thrive for years to come. So, that's basically all that I have as far as the Trump rally goes. But there was something that I wanted to talk about as far as Roseanne Barr, and she had a tweet that I want to show you really quick here. Something new that I'm going to try. It's a new view. So I wanted to go ahead and talk a little bit about Roseanne Barr's tweet. It's as you see on the screen, it says Muslim Brotherhood and Planet of the Apes had a baby, which equals Valerie Jarrett. And many people have interpreted that tweet as racist, and I can't necessarily agree with them. I mean, that is pretty brutal language that she is using. However, I do look at Valerie Jarrett and I question many of her actions and her close connection with Barack Obama. She is Muslim, and she does have ties to some extreme Muslim groups. And so the real question here is, what are her intentions? I mean, she has been quoted as saying that she wants America to be a Muslim country, and she doesn't believe that America should be a Christian country. So I don't agree with this tweet by Roseanne, and I think she could have absolutely tried to explain her opinion in different ways. I think most of what happens is people just go off the cuff, and although she is a comedian and she might think it's funny, I mean, I get it. But at the same time, I mean, there's certain things that shouldn't be said, and I think that is hurtful to a good amount of people. So it's just the idea of not so much the idea that you're trying to convey, because she's trying to pull a Trump card here, and I think the only person that can pull a Trump card is Trump himself. So I think she should absolutely be a little bit more aware of exactly what she's talking about.